Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the busy merchant quarter of New Geneva Station. The air recyclers hummed overhead, mixing the scents of a dozen different worlds. Alien traders filled the wide corridors, their voices creating a constant buzz of activity that never stopped. Not even during the station's artificial night cycle. As a cargo inspector, Marcus had seen it all. He checked shipments from across the galaxy, making sure nothing dangerous or illegal made it onto the station. After 5 years on the job, he thought he knew every trick in the book. But today felt different somehow. The tall Villani merchants glided past him on their long legs, their silver skin catching the artificial light. They spoke in musical tones as they negotiated deals for rare crystals from their home system. Near the food courts, a group of Zephyrians hummed together in perfect harmony, their crystal bodies ringing like bells as they discussed grain prices. Marcus loved this part of his job. New Geneva Station was like a small city floating in space, where dozens of different species lived and worked together. Most of the time, it worked pretty well. Different cultures, different ways of doing things, but they all managed to get along. He was heading toward Docking Bay 7 to check a shipment of medical supplies when something caught his eye. 2 Catherians were walking with a small child, also Catherian. The adults were tall and thin like all their species, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. The child looked like a smaller version of them, maybe 8 years old in human terms. At first glance, it looked perfectly normal. Catherian families were known for being very formal and strict with their children. Marcus had worked with many Catherians over the years and knew they took child-rearing very seriously. Their culture valued discipline and proper behavior above almost everything else, but something felt wrong. Marcus slowed his pace and watched the trio more carefully. The child's steps were slow and hesitant. She kept looking back over her shoulder as if hoping someone might follow them. Her large eyes, which should have been bright and curious like most children, looked scared instead. The 2 adults held her arms firmly, one on each side. Too firmly, Marcus thought. Their movements were stiff and purposeful, like they were trying to get somewhere quickly without drawing attention. The child stumbled once, and instead of helping her up gently, they pulled her along without even looking down at her. Marcus frowned. In all his time working with Catherians, he had never seen adults treat a child that way. Sure, they were formal and strict, but they were also known for being very protective of their young. This looked more like they were dragging her somewhere she didn't want to go. He followed them at a distance, staying behind other pedestrians so they wouldn't notice him. The corridor led toward the transport terminals, where smaller ships came and went constantly. The child looked back again, and this time Marcus caught her eye for just a moment. What he saw there made his stomach tighten with worry, fear, pure, helpless fear. Marcus picked up his pace. He needed to do something, but what? He couldn't just walk up to a Catherian family and demand to know what they were doing. Different species had different ways of raising their children. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe this was normal for them, but his gut told him otherwise. He activated his comm unit and called station security. Officer Vexteller answered, his voice carrying the calm authority that all Altarians seemed to possess naturally. Security. What is your concern, Inspector Chen? I'm in Corridor C7 near the transport terminals. I think there might be a problem with a Catherian family, 2 adults and a child. The child looks distressed. There was a pause. Distressed how? Marcus watched as the trio reached the terminal entrance. She looks scared. They're holding her too tightly, dragging her along. She keeps looking back like she wants help. Inspector Chen, Officer Vexteller said slowly. Catherians have very different family structures than humans. What you perceive as distress may simply be their normal disciplinary methods. We cannot interfere with family matters based on human emotional interpretations. But she's clearly upset. Thank you for your concern, Inspector. We will make a note of it. But unless you observe actual violence or hear calls for help, we cannot act. Different species, different customs. The comm unit went dead. Marcus stared at it in frustration. He looked up to see the 2 adults and the child disappearing into the transport terminal. Every instinct he had was screaming that something was wrong, but apparently his instincts didn't matter to anyone else. He followed them into the terminal. The large space was filled with beings of all kinds waiting for their ships. Display boards showed dozens of destinations across the local systems. Marcus spotted the Catherians near Platform 12, where a small transport ship was preparing to depart. The child had stopped walking. One of the adults was speaking to her in low tones, words Marcus couldn't understand. But he didn't need to understand the language to see that the child was shaking her head, backing away slightly. The adult grabbed her arm more firmly and started pulling her toward the ship's boarding ramp. That was when Marcus saw it clearly. The child looked directly at him across the busy terminal. Her large eyes were wide with terror, and her mouth opened as if she wanted to scream but couldn't. She reached out one small hand in his direction, a gesture so universal that it needed no translation. "Help me." Marcus started moving toward them, but he was too far away and there were too many people between them. By the time he pushed through the crowd, the 3 Catherians were already boarding the ship. He could see the child in one of the small windows, her pale face pressed against the glass, still looking back at the station. The transport's engine started up with a low hum. Marcus ran to the platform control station where a bored-looking Centaurian was processing departure clearances. "That ship," Marcus said, pointing at the transport. "I need to know where it's going." The Centaurian's 4 eyes looked at him with mild interest. "Are you authorized to access flight plans?" "I'm Station Inspector Chen, badge number 7742. After checking his credentials, the Centaurian shrugged and brought up the information on his screen. "Transport vessel Swift Current, destination Kepler Station, Asteroid Belt Mining Facility 7. Purpose of travel listed as family relocation." "Mining facility?" Marcus frowned.
What would a family want with a mining facility?
"Not my job to ask," the Centaurian said. "Everything's in order. Ship's cleared for departure." Marcus watched helplessly as the transport ship undocked from the station and disappeared into the starfield. Somewhere on that ship was a little girl who was afraid, and he was the only one who had noticed, the only one who seemed to care. He stood there for a long time, staring out at the empty space where the ship had been. Around him, life on the station continued as normal. Traders made deals, families reunited, ships came and went. But Marcus couldn't shake the image of those frightened eyes and that small hand reaching out for help. Something was very wrong, and somehow he was going to figure out what it was. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the little Catherian girl's face pressed against the transport window. He had tried to push it out of his mind, telling himself that maybe the security officer was right. Maybe it was just different customs. Maybe he was seeing problems where none existed, but he couldn't make himself believe it. The next morning, Marcus went straight to his supervisor's office. Director Walsh was a practical woman who had been running cargo operations on New Geneva Station for over a decade. She knew how to cut through bureaucracy when something important needed to be done. "I need to use a patrol ship," Marcus said without preamble. Director Walsh looked up from her morning reports. "Good morning to you too, Chen. What for?" "That transport yesterday. The one that went to the mining facility in the asteroid belt. I need to check it out." "Since when do we inspect mining facilities?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "The ship's manifest listed medical supplies, but I didn't get a chance to verify the cargo before departure. If they're carrying unregistered pharmaceuticals to a remote facility, that's a serious safety violation." It wasn't technically a lie. Marcus had checked the manifest after the fact, and there were indeed medical supplies listed. He just hadn't mentioned that they appeared to be completely legitimate. Director Walsh studied him for a moment. "This wouldn't have anything to do with your call to security yesterday, would it?" Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I'm just doing my job, Director." She sighed and authorized the patrol ship. 24 hours, Chen, and don't start any diplomatic incidents." 3 hours later, Marcus was piloting a small inspection vessel through the asteroid belt. The ship's navigation system guided him toward Mining Facility 7, which according to official records was operated by a Catherian company called Cultural Preservation Enterprises. The name bothered him. What did cultural preservation have to do with mining? As he approached the facility, Marcus could see it was much larger than a typical asteroid mining operation. Instead of the rough industrial structures he expected, the facility looked almost elegant. Smooth metal buildings connected by enclosed walkways, all of it gleaming clean in the light of the distant sun. Marcus activated his comm and requested permission to dock. A pleasant voice answered immediately. "Welcome to Cultural Preservation Facility 7. State your business, please." "Station Inspector Chen, routine cargo verification visit." There was a brief pause. Of course, Inspector. Docking Bay 3 is prepared for your arrival. Too easy, Marcus thought. Most facilities grumbled about surprise inspections. These people sounded almost eager to welcome him. The docking bay was spotless and well-maintained. As Marcus stepped off his ship, he was greeted by a tall Cytherian male wearing expensive-looking robes. The alien's pale blue skin was marked with intricate tattoos that Marcus recognized as symbols of high status in Cytherian society. Inspector Chen, welcome. I am Administrator Kethmar. How may we assist you today? Just a routine check on the medical supplies that arrived yesterday, Marcus said. Standard procedure, of course. Though I should mention, the supplies you refer to were actually educational materials, books and learning aids for our cultural program. Marcus felt his suspicions sharpen. Cultural program? Yes, we provide traditional education for young Cytherians whose families wish them to learn the old ways. Many of our people have become too influenced by foreign cultures in the modern galaxy. Here children can study pure Cytherian traditions. It sounded reasonable, but something in the administrator's tone made Marcus uneasy. I'd like to see these educational materials. Certainly. Right this way. Kethmar led him through several corridors lined with what looked like classroom doors. Marcus could hear voices from behind some of them, young voices reciting what sounded like lessons, but the voices seemed strangely flat, lacking the energy and enthusiasm he would expect from children. They reached a storage room filled with boxes of books and learning tablets. Everything looked legitimate, exactly what you would expect to find in a school. But Marcus's trained eye noticed something odd about the shipping labels. They had been changed recently, the original destination scraped off and replaced. These materials came from several different suppliers, Marcus observed. Yes, we source from across the galaxy to ensure completeness. Marcus picked up one of the tablets and activated it. The screen showed a lesson about traditional Cytherian poetry. It seemed innocent enough, but when he looked more closely at the tablet's memory logs, he found something interesting. The device had originally been programmed with entertainment software, games, and stories for children. The educational content had been added recently, almost like it was covering up what had been there before. Administrator, I'd like to speak with some of the students. Standard procedure for educational facilities. For the first time, Kethmar hesitated. I'm afraid that's not possible at the moment. The children are in deep meditation, a crucial part of their cultural training. Interrupting them could be harmful to their development. When will the meditation end? Not for several hours. Perhaps you could return another time? Marcus pretended to consider this. Actually, I think I'll wait. I have time. He could see the administrator's discomfort growing. Inspector, I really must insist that you not disturb the children. Their families have entrusted us with their care, and we take that responsibility very seriously. That was when Marcus heard it. A sound so faint he almost missed it, a child crying somewhere in the facility. The sound cut off quickly as if someone had muffled it. What was that? Marcus asked. What was what? I heard a child crying. Kethmar's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a flicker of something in his large eyes. Fear? Anger? Perhaps one of the students is having difficulty with their lessons. Children can be emotional during cultural adjustment. Cultural adjustment. The phrase sent a chill down Marcus's spine. In his experience, children didn't need to be adjusted to their own culture. They were born into it. I think I will take that tour of the classrooms now, Marcus said firmly. Inspector, I really cannot allow. Marcus stepped closer to the administrator, using his height advantage to loom over the thinner alien. Administrator Kethmar, I am a certified station inspector with full authority to examine any facility in this system. You can cooperate with my inspection, or I can call for a full investigation team with security backup. Your choice. The threat was mostly empty. Marcus didn't have the authority to call in a full team without evidence of wrongdoing, but Kethmar didn't need to know that. After a long moment, the administrator nodded stiffly. Very well, but please be quiet. The children must not be disturbed unnecessarily. They walked down a different corridor, this one lined with doors that had small windows. Marcus looked through the first window and saw a classroom with about a dozen young Cytherians sitting perfectly still, staring at a screen. They weren't participating or asking questions. They just sat there motionless. The next classroom was the same, and the next. Every room contained children who sat like statues, their faces blank and empty. This wasn't education. This was something else entirely. In the last classroom, Marcus finally saw her. The little girl from the station, sitting in the front row. Her large eyes were fixed on the screen, but Marcus could see tear tracks on her pale cheeks. She looked smaller than she had on the station, somehow diminished. Marcus tried to open the classroom door, but it was locked. He looked at Kethmar, who was watching him with barely concealed hostility. "Why are the doors locked?" "Security measure. The children can be unpredictable during their adjustment period." Adjustment to what? Before Kethmar could answer, an alarm began sounding throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Marcus could hear the sound of running feet somewhere in the distance. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded. Kethmar spoke quickly into a comm device in his own language. Then he turned back to Marcus with a cold smile. "I'm afraid there's been a security breach, Inspector. For your own safety, you'll need to return to your ship immediately." But Marcus was no longer looking at the administrator. He was looking through the classroom window, where the little girl had turned to stare directly at him. Her mouth was moving, forming words he couldn't hear through the soundproof glass. "Help me." The same message she had tried to send on the station. Marcus pressed his hand against the window, and the girl placed her small palm against the glass from the other side. For a moment, they were connected across the barrier between them. Then security guards appeared in the corridor, moving toward Marcus with obvious purpose. These weren't Catherians. They were members of species Marcus didn't recognize, all of them large and armed. "Inspector Chen," Kethmar said smoothly, "I really must insist that you leave now." Marcus looked once more at the little girl, memorizing her face. Then he nodded and allowed himself to be escorted back to his ship. But as his patrol vessel lifted off from the facility, he was already making plans. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Marcus spent the entire flight back to New Geneva Station trying to figure out his next move. What he had seen at the facility was clearly wrong, but he had no proof of actual wrongdoing. Locked classrooms and sad children weren't technically illegal, especially when dealing with different species and their customs. But Marcus knew what he had seen. Those children weren't students. They were prisoners. As soon as he docked, Marcus went straight to the communications center and sent out a priority message to every human he knew in the sector. The message was simple. "Need to talk. Important. Meet me at Murphy's Bar tonight." Murphy's Bar was one of the few establishments on New Geneva Station that catered specifically to humans. It served real Earth food and kept the artificial gravity at Earth normal, making it uncomfortable for most other species. It was the perfect place for a private conversation. By evening, Marcus had managed to gather 12 other humans from across the station. There was Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist who studied alien children's development. Tom Rodriguez ran a shipping company that operated throughout the system. Captain Lisa Zhang commanded a diplomatic transport. Others included traders, technicians, and researchers. Marcus had worked with all of them at various times, and he trusted them to listen to what he had to say. "You all know me," Marcus began. "I'm not the type to see conspiracies where they don't exist. But I need to tell you about something I witnessed, and I need to know if any of you have seen anything similar." He told them about the little Catherian girl on the station, the transport to the mining facility, and what he had found there. As he spoke, he watched their faces. Most looked troubled but not surprised. When he finished, Dr. Kim was the first to speak. "I've seen it too," she said quietly. 3 months ago, I was doing research on a Centaurian colony world. I watched a group of Altarian adults taking several young Centaurians away from a school. The children looked terrified, but when I asked the local authorities about it, they said it was a normal educational exchange program. Tom Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Last year, I was shipping supplies to a remote station in the Vega system. Saw a bunch of young aliens being loaded onto a luxury transport. Mixed species kids, all of them looking scared out of their minds. When I asked about it, they told me it was a cultural enrichment program." One by one, the others began sharing similar stories. Captain Zhang had seen young beings being transferred between ships under suspicious circumstances. A trader named Jeff Collins had witnessed what looked like children being sold at a private auction on a lawless station in the Outer Rim. "The thing is," Dr. Kim said, "every time I tried to report these incidents to the authorities, they dismissed my concerns. They said I was misinterpreting normal cultural practices." Marcus leaned forward. "That's exactly what happened to me. The security officer told me that humans see patterns where none exist. But we do see patterns, Captain Zhang said. That's the point. We can recognize when a child is in distress regardless of what species they are. Dr. Kim nodded enthusiastically. It's true. Human pattern recognition evolved to protect our young in dangerous environments. We learn to read body language, facial expressions, and vocal tones that indicate fear or distress. Those skills transfer across species barriers because basic emotional responses are universal. Tom Rodriguez frowned. So you're saying other species can't tell when alien children are scared? Not can't, Dr. Kim corrected. They just don't think to look for it. Most species only recognize distress signals from their own kind. They assume other species' children behave differently, so they don't question what they see. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place in his mind. That's how this trafficking operation works. They hide in plain sight because most beings can't or won't recognize the signs of distress in alien children. Trafficking? Captain Zhang asked sharply. Marcus explained what he suspected based on what he had seen at the facility. The others listened with growing anger and disgust. We have to do something, Dr. Kim said. Like what? Jeff Collins asked. We tried reporting it through official channels. Nobody believes us. Then we go around the official channels, Tom Rodriguez said. We gather evidence ourselves. Marcus had been thinking the same thing. I managed to plant a small tracking device on one of the transport shuttles at the facility. If we can follow it, see where these children are being taken. Captain Zhang checked her tablet. I can access shipping manifests and flight plans through my diplomatic clearance. If we know what to look for, we might be able to trace the entire network. Over the next several hours, they developed a plan. Using their combined resources and access, they would track shipments and movements that matched the pattern they had all observed. Dr. Kim would analyze the psychological profiles of the operation to predict how it worked. The traders and ship captains would use their contacts to gather information from across the sector. It was dangerous. If they were discovered investigating a criminal organization, they could all lose their jobs or worse. But none of them could ignore what they had seen. As the meeting broke up, Dr. Kim pulled Marcus aside. There's something else you should know, she said. I did some research after our conversation started tonight. According to Galactic census data, there are over 3,000 missing children from various species reported in this sector alone over the past 5 years. Marcus felt sick. 3,000? Most of the cases were filed away as runaways or family disputes. Nobody connected them because they involved different species from different worlds. But if you look at the pattern, she showed him a star map on her tablet. Red dots marked the locations where children had disappeared. The dots formed clear trade routes between major stations and wealthy worlds. It's been going on for years, Marcus said quietly, and it's going to continue unless someone stops it. The next day, Marcus returned to his normal duties, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time he saw alien families with children, he found himself studying their body language, looking for signs of distress. He was amazed at how obvious the clues were once you knew what to look for. A Zephyrian child who flinched when an adult touched him. A young Villani who kept trying to walk away from her supposed guardians. A Centaurian youngster whose distress calls were being ignored by adults who dismissed them as normal childhood behavior. How many others had he missed over the years? How many children had passed through the station while he went about his business, not realizing they needed help? That evening, Marcus received a coded message from Tom Rodriguez. The tracking device had worked. They now knew where the transport from the mining facility had gone. A luxury space yacht registered to a wealthy collector on Proxima Station. A being known for acquiring exotic items from across the galaxy, the little Cytherian girl and the other children from the facility had been sold. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it and began making preparations. He was going to need a ship, supplies, and most importantly, a plan to get those children back. The other humans in their group were already working on their own parts of the operation. Dr. Kim was analyzing the psychological profiles of the traffickers to predict their next moves. Captain Zhang was using her diplomatic contacts to trace the money trail. The traders were mapping out the entire network of buyers and sellers, but Marcus had a more direct goal. He was going to find that little girl and he was going to bring her home, no matter what it took. 2 weeks after the meeting at Murphy's Bar, Marcus and his team had uncovered more than they had ever imagined. The trafficking network wasn't just operating in their sector. It stretched across half the galaxy, with connections to some of the most powerful trading companies and political figures in known space. Captain Zhang had traced financial records that led to the Galactic Trade Consortium itself. Dr. Kim had identified over 24 facilities similar to the one Marcus had visited, all operating under different names but following the same pattern. The traders in their group had discovered auction houses and private clubs where wealthy collectors bought and sold children like they were rare artifacts. But the most disturbing discovery came from a deeper investigation into the missing children database. Dr. Kim had expanded her search beyond their local sector, and the numbers were staggering. Over 50,000 children, she said during their latest meeting. 50,000 missing children across 12 sectors spanning the last 20 years. The room fell silent. Marcus felt like he had been punched in the stomach. How is that possible? Tom Rodriguez asked. How could so many children disappear without anyone noticing? Because each species only looks for their own, Dr. Kim explained. Catherian authorities investigate missing Catherian children. Villani police look for missing Villani, but nobody looks at the bigger picture. Nobody connects the dots between species. Marcus studied the data on Dr. Kim's tablet. The disappearances followed clear patterns, concentrating around major trade routes and wealthy systems. But the individual cases were scattered across dozens of different law enforcement jurisdictions, making it nearly impossible for any single authority to see the full scope. There's something else, Captain Zhang said grimly. I've been tracking the money trail and it leads directly to the Galactic Council itself. Not the whole council, but several key members who've been taking payments from the trafficking network for years. Jeff Collins shook his head in disgust. So the people who are supposed to protect children are actually helping to sell them. It gets worse, Dr. Kim continued. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of how this operation works. They don't just rely on species blindness. They actively cultivate it. The trafficking network has been funding cultural research that emphasizes differences between species, making it seem normal that we can't understand each other's children. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. They're using our diversity against us. Exactly. They publish papers about how human emotional responses are primitive and unreliable. They fund studies that claim different species have completely incompatible child-rearing practices. They make it seem crazy to think that a human could recognize distress in an alien child. Tom Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. So what do? We can't trust the authorities. We can't trust the legal system. How do we fight something this big? Marcus had been thinking about that question for days. We do what we've always done. We trust our instincts and we protect the children. All of them. Over the next several days, Marcus began reaching out to humans throughout the galaxy, using the trader networks and communication channels that existed outside official government systems. He sent messages to human settlements, research stations, and trading posts across dozens of sectors. The message was simple. If you see a child in distress, regardless of species, contact us. We believe you. We'll help. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from humans who had witnessed suspicious activities but been told to ignore them. Traders who had seen children being transported under questionable circumstances. Researchers who had observed signs of abuse but been dismissed by local authorities. Each message added another piece to the puzzle. The trafficking network was even larger than they had suspected, with operations spanning the entire known galaxy. But it also revealed something else. Humans everywhere had been noticing these crimes and trying to report them, only to be ignored or silenced. Dr. Kim analyzed the incoming reports and identified the network structure. It's organized like a corporation, she explained. There are supply chains that acquire children from poor or unstable worlds. Processing centers like the one Marcus found, where children are prepared for sale. Distribution networks that move them to buyers. And protection systems that keep the whole operation hidden. Marcus studied the organizational chart Dr. Kim had created. What about the children who are already in the system? Can we track them? Captain Zhang pulled up her shipping manifests. I've been following transport records for the last month. There's a pattern. Large shipments of cultural artifacts and educational materials that move between known trafficking facilities and private collectors. The timing matches up with child disappearances. She highlighted several routes on a star map. There's a major distribution event happening next week. 3 transport ships leaving from different facilities, all heading toward the same destination, a private station in the Centauri system owned by a collector named Vexithara. Marcus knew that name. Vexithara was one of the wealthiest beings in the galaxy, known for collecting rare items from across the universe. If children were being sold as collectibles, how many children? Marcus asked. Captain Zhang checked her records. Based on the shipping manifests, probably over 100, maybe more. The room fell silent again. Marcus could see the same thought in everyone's eyes. They had found the heart of the operation, but they were just a small group of humans with no official authority. How could they possibly rescue over 100 children from one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy? "We need more help," Tom Rodriguez said finally. Marcus nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing, but not from the authorities. We need to go directly to the families." Over the next few days, Marcus and his team reached out to parents across the galaxy whose children had disappeared. They shared their evidence and explained what they had discovered. The response was immediate and powerful. Catherian parents who had been told their children were in cultural education programs. Villani families who had believed their young ones were participating in academic exchanges. Centaurians whose children had supposedly joined prestigious training programs. All of them learning for the first time that their children had actually been sold to collectors. The parents were furious. More importantly, they were organized. Within days, Marcus found himself coordinating with family groups from dozens of species, all demanding action from their governments. But the governments were slow to respond. Some were corrupt, taking money from the trafficking network. Others were bureaucratic, requiring extensive proof before they would act. Many simply didn't believe that such a large operation could exist without their knowledge. Time was running out. According to Captain Zhang's intelligence, the distribution event was only 3 days away. Once those children were scattered across the galaxy to private collectors, finding them would be nearly impossible. That's when Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "We're not waiting for the governments," he announced at their next meeting. "We're going after those children ourselves." The others stared at him. "Marcus," Dr. Kim said carefully, "we're talking about a private military station defended by mercenaries. We're cargo inspectors and researchers, not soldiers." "No," Marcus said firmly. "We're humans, and humans don't abandon children in danger." Tom Rodriguez leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" Marcus pulled up the intelligence they had gathered on Vexthara's station. The collectors expecting 3 shipments of cultural artifacts. What if one of those shipments was actually a rescue team? Captain Zhang caught on immediately. "We intercept one of the transport ships. Replace the crew with our people. Use the ship to get inside the station. Then what?" Jeff Collins asked. "Even if we get inside, how do we get over 100 children out without being caught?" Marcus smiled grimly. "We don't sneak them out. We call in their parents." He showed them the plan he had been developing, while the rescue team infiltrated the station. The parent groups they had contacted would be filing simultaneous legal actions in every major court system in the galaxy. The media attention alone would force the authorities to act. "We turn this into the biggest scandal in galactic history," Marcus explained. "Make it impossible for anyone to ignore what's been happening." Dr. Kim shook her head in amazement. "It's completely insane." "It's also our only chance," Marcus said. "Those children have been invisible for too long. It's time to make them impossible to ignore." As the others began discussing the details of the plan, Marcus thought about the little Catherian girl he had seen at the facility. Soon she would be free. They all would be. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to protect someone. The plan came together faster than Marcus had dared to hope. Within 24 hours, humans across the galaxy were mobilizing, not just the traders and researchers from their original group, but teachers, engineers, ship captains, and families who had heard their call and decided to help. Tom Rodriguez used his shipping contacts to intercept Transport Ship 7 as it left the mining facility. The crew was paid off and replaced with volunteers who knew how to fly the ship. Dr. Kim created false documentation that would get them past the station's security. Captain Zhang coordinated with parent groups across dozens of worlds, timing their legal actions to create maximum impact. Marcus found himself on the bridge of the transport ship, wearing the uniform of a Catherian shipping clerk. His job was to get them inside Vexthara's private station and locate the children, After that, everything depended on timing and luck. The station appeared on their screens as they approached the Centauri system. It was massive, clearly built for luxury rather than efficiency. Gleaming towers and observation decks extended from a central hub, the whole structure designed to showcase the wealth and power of its owner. Transport Ship 7, "You are cleared for docking," came the voice from station control. "Proceed to Cargo Bay 12. Marcus tried to keep his voice steady as he responded. "Acknowledged, Control. Transport 7 proceeding to dock." The cargo bay was enormous, clearly designed to handle large shipments. As their ship settled onto the docking platform, Marcus could see other transport vessels being unloaded nearby. His heart sank as he recognized some of the shipping containers. They were the same type he had seen at the mining facility. A Villani docking supervisor approached their ship as the crew prepared to disembark. Marcus forced himself to walk calmly down the loading ramp, carrying the forged documentation Dr. Kim had prepared. "Manifest and inspection certificates," the supervisor demanded in the clipped, efficient tone that Villani used for business transactions. Marcus handed over the documents, fighting to keep his hands from shaking. The supervisor scanned them quickly, then gestured toward a group of workers waiting nearby. "Bay 7 for processing. Standard cultural preservation protocols apply." Cultural preservation. Marcus had to bite his tongue to keep from saying what he really thought about that phrase. The workers were a mix of species, all wearing the same gray uniforms that marked them as station employees. They began unloading the cargo containers with practiced efficiency, loading them onto hover carts for transport deeper into the station. Marcus and two other humans from the rescue team followed the carts, acting like they were supervising the delivery. The corridors they traveled through were decorated with expensive art and artifacts from across the galaxy. Everything screamed wealth and power. They reached a large processing area where workers were opening containers and sorting their contents. Marcus tried not to react as he saw what was inside some of them. Children, dozens of them from different species, all looking confused and frightened as they were divided into groups. That's when he saw her, the little Cytherian girl from New Geneva Station, standing with a group of other young Cytherians near the far wall. She looked even smaller than before, her large eyes empty of hope. Marcus activated his comm unit, sending a coded message to Captain Zhang. "Package located. Beginning extraction." The reply came back immediately. "Legal actions initiated. Media coverage going live in 10 minutes. Marcus checked his chronometer. Everything had to happen at exactly the right time, or the whole plan would fall apart. He moved closer to the children, trying to look like he was inspecting the merchandise. The little girl looked up at him as he approached, and for a moment Marcus saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Hello, Zara," he said quietly in the few words of Cytherian he had learned over the past week. Her eyes widened. She remembered him from the station. "I'm here to take you home," Marcus continued in Standard Galactic, hoping she would understand. Before Zara could respond, alarms started sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Marcus could hear running feet and shouting voices. "What's happening?" one of the station workers called out. The answer came over the station's communication system. The voice belonged to Vexathara himself, speaking in the fluid tones of his species. "Attention all personnel. We are experiencing a coordinated legal and media assault. All operations are to be suspended immediately. Secure all assets and prepare for possible inspection." Marcus smiled grimly. The parent groups had done their job. Legal documents demanding the return of stolen children were being filed in courts across the galaxy. News organizations were broadcasting the story of the trafficking network to billions of viewers. The scandal was too big to hide or ignore, but they still had to get the children out of the station. Marcus moved quickly to where Zara was standing. "We're leaving now," he told her. "Can you help me with the other children?" Zara nodded, her natural empathic abilities allowing her to sense his genuine intention to help. She spoke quickly to the other Cytherian children in their own language, then moved to a group of young Villani nearby. Marcus was amazed to watch her work. Despite being only a child herself, Zara seemed to understand that something important was happening. She moved from group to group, using gestures and simple words to communicate with children from different species. Within minutes, over 30 children were following her toward the exit. Other members of the rescue team had appeared throughout the processing area. each gathering groups of children and leading them toward the docking bays. The station workers were too confused by the alarms and conflicting orders to stop them. Marcus and Zara reached the transport ship just as Tom Rodriguez was starting the engines. "Emergency departure in 60 seconds, he called over the comm. They loaded the children onto the ship as quickly as possible. Marcus did a final count and realized they had rescued nearly 50 children from just this one processing area. There had to be more elsewhere in the station. "We can't leave the others," Marcus said. Zara tugged on his sleeve and pointed toward another corridor. More children were being led toward the docking bays by other rescue teams. Dr. Kim's group had found the main holding area. Captain Zhang's team was evacuating children from what looked like a medical facility. As their transport ship lifted off from the station, Marcus could see other ships departing as well. The entire rescue operation was working exactly as planned, but the real victory was happening elsewhere in the galaxy. Captain Zhang's voice came over the comm with updates from around the known worlds. Cytherian Parliament has issued arrest warrants for the Cultural Preservation Enterprise leadership. Villani authorities are raiding suspected trafficking facilities in their territory. The Centaurian government is demanding a full investigation of the Galactic Trade Consortium. As they jumped to hyperspace, heading back toward New Geneva Station, Marcus found himself sitting next to Zara. The little girl was still processing everything that had happened, but she no longer looked afraid. "Thank you," she said in careful standard galactic. "Thank you for helping the other children," Marcus replied. Zara smiled. The first real smile Marcus had seen from her. Humans see us, really see us. Other people look, but they don't see. Over the following weeks, the scandal continued to grow. The trafficking network collapsed as governments across the galaxy were forced to confront the evidence. Corrupt officials were arrested. Victims were reunited with their families. New laws were passed requiring cross-species cooperation in child protection cases. Most importantly, a new organization was formed to prevent such crimes in the future. The Galactic Child Protection Alliance included representatives from every major species, but its training programs were based on human methods of recognizing distress across species barriers. Marcus returned to his job as a cargo inspector, but now he had additional responsibilities. He trained other beings to recognize the signs he had learned to see. He helped establish protocols for reporting suspected trafficking. He made sure that never again would someone dismiss a concerned human as seeing patterns where none exist. Zara was reunited with her family on the Cytherian homeworld, but she stayed in contact with Marcus and the other humans who had rescued her. She became an advocate for her own people, helping to identify children who needed protection and working with human specialists to train Cytherian authorities. 6 months after the rescue, Marcus received a message from Zara's parents. It was a formal invitation to visit their homeworld as an honored guest of their family. The message was signed not just by Zara's parents, but by the leaders of the Cytherian government. As Marcus prepared for the trip, he reflected on everything that had changed. The galaxy was still full of different species with different customs and different ways of seeing the world. But now they understood that some things were universal: the need to protect children, the ability to recognize suffering regardless of what form it took, the responsibility to act when someone needed help. Humans had earned a new reputation in the galactic community. They were no longer seen as emotional and unpredictable. They were recognized as the species that cared about everyone's children, not just their own. And in a galaxy full of wonders and dangers, that was exactly the reputation Marcus was proud to have.